the faithful witness of Ron Wyatt, whose credibility was established through the other discoveries we have already seen thus far. The Lord used Mr. Wyatt to find other discoveries, so we can trust his testimony regarding this most important find. In God's appointed time, we will all see this incredible discovery. Here now is Ron Wyatt and the Ark of the Covenant.
I had had an unusual experience. The Lord had helped me find the remains of Noah's Ark. He had helped me find the remains of the Egyptian chariot parts and horse parts and people parts in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba. And I had gone to the Middle East with my sons. We had trained as divers, scuba divers, and we were going to get some of those chariot parts out. Well, due to my carelessness, I got sunburned to the point that my legs swelled up, my feet, and all of this, and I couldn't get my diving equipment on. So I was up in Jerusalem hobbling around, feeling very, very rained on, waiting for my cheap airline ticket, the date that was on it, to arrive so we could fly home. We didn't have the money to change the ticket. And during this time, I was hobbling around the city a little bit. And one day I met this archaeologist who was in charge of the Jerusalem area there. And why he should be talking to me, I don't have a clue. I didn't look very presentable. We were staying in a youth hostel, sleeping in our clothes. I'm sure I didn't smell very good. Maybe I was fortunate enough that he was upwind from me or something. But anyway, we got into a conversation, and I told him about Noah's Ark, and then I explained to him how the pyramids were built, and that seemed to get his attention. So he says, I've been doing some digging along this cliff face here. He says, how about coming along with me and have a look at it and see what you think? So I was walking along, looking. These were Roman ruins and remains. And my left hand suddenly pointed out at a grubby-looking hole in the rock where there was garbage, 2 dead cats, shall we say, nasty stuff. And my mouth said, that's Jeremiah's grotto, and the Ark of the Covenant is in there. This guy said, that's wonderful. He said, we will let you excavate there, and we'll provide you a place to stay, your food, your laundry. I can, understand why he mentioned laundry. But I couldn't understand a Jewish person being that generous. That's not their nature. And I was stunned because I had not been thinking about the Ark of the Covenant at all. Wondering why on earth we hadn't been able to get some chariot wheels out. You see, I pray about everything, folks. I did back then, too. I knew I was supposed to be there. But what I thought I was supposed to be there for was not what I was supposed to be there for. So anyway, our ticket was due to the date it finally arrived, and that was the next morning after we had this conversation, or after I had the conversation with this man. So I said, well, that's great. I'll come back and do that. Now I've got to go home, and make some preparations. So anyway, I went home wondering why on earth the Ark of the Covenant could possibly be in that place. So I read in 2 Kings chapter 25, where it says that the whole city was surrounded by a siege wall. So anyway, I became persuaded that the Ark of the Covenant was indeed in that place, because I knew some supernatural force had used my arm and my voice. when it first happened, I didn't know which one. And we're instructed to try the spirits to see whether they be of God. We can't flatter ourselves and say anything that comes out of my mouth because I pray and all of this, that anything I say must be from God. We have to check it against the law and the testimony, regardless of where it comes from, even ourselves. But what I discovered when I started excavating down that cliff wall, first of all, I discovered the cutouts in the wall of the cliff where they had posted the signs, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. I found the cross holes in a place that I had no idea they would be, and that was at the base of that cliff. Of course, now that we found them, we realized that that's where the public road went back and forth through there. It was, the ideal place for a crucifixion. Had to be, otherwise the Romans probably wouldn't have chosen it.
Ron Wyatt worked for many years on the Ark of the Covenant excavation. He conducted his work under a permit issued by the Israel Antiquities Authority, but the permit was not made public due to the nature and sensitivity of the work. Some critics have said he never even worked in the grounds of the Garden Tomb area, but as you can see here, his presence was well established. At times, he would have many people helping with the excavation above ground and below. We acknowledge that the book of Maccabees, in the Apocrypha, is not an inspired book, but it may have some historical information which we can glean. Here it states, Jeremiah found a cave dwelling. He carried the tent, the ark, and the incense altar into it. Then he blocked up the entrance. The place shall remain unknown, he said, until God finally gathers his people together and shows mercy to them. Then the Lord will bring these things to light again.
Now, when Christ died and the earth shook and the rocks were rent, a crack came right down the entire face of the escarpment, right past the left side of the cross hole, and the stone opened up. Down below, 20 feet below, God had arranged for the Ark of the Covenant with its mercy seat, if you please, his earthly throne, to be positioned right down there 600 years before, in 586 BC, when the Babylonian army destroyed the city. When the centurion stuck his spear in Christ's spleen and probably left ventricle to make sure he was dead before he gave the body to Joseph of Arimathea, when he pulled that spear out, the separated platelets and serum of the blood of the Son of God gushed out, went down through that crack onto the mercy seat. And that ratified the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. The fourth trip I made into this chamber, it was spotless. The furnishings were set in perfect order. The Ark of the Covenant, however, had been placed against the wall, the end of the cave. The end of the cave was a beautiful crystal radiating the colors of the rainbow. Now, I know New Age and all that goes in for rainbows, so do homosexuals and all of that. But God used it first, all right? It's around his throne, and it's around his earthly throne. Now, there's no veil in this setup, so it is the earthly, it's God's temple on earth, or his residence where he once dwelt. And anyway, when I found it like this, there were 4 young men standing in there. And I started to say, what are you doing here? And I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything. One of the people said, we are the 4 angels that have been taking care of the ark since Moses put the tables of stone in it, right? And they instructed me to set up my video camera with the tripod, aim it at the Ark of the Covenant, and they went over, lifted the mercy seat up, I don't know how heavy it is. I've never tried to lift it, but it's solid gold. And the angel said, take the tables of stone out of there. God wants everyone to see those. I took them out, all right? They put the mercy seat back down over the Ark of the Covenant. I backed away a little bit. The angel came, got the tables of stone, put them on a rock ledge inside the chamber, and I was then instructed to take a sample of the blood from the mercy seat, have that analyzed, and I did everything the angel told me to do. Real quickly, okay, dried blood is dead blood. Everybody knows that, all right? They can test the blood of the pharaohs, the mummies of the pharaohs, all right? There's certain things they can do. They cannot get a chromosome count by any method I'm familiar with, all right? Things keep changing. I don't profess to know everything. However, there's no way I know that you can get a chromosome count out of dead blood. You can get a DNA and some other things, but not a chromosome count, all right? That's done by living white blood cells. Now then, first of all, in this analysis, I took the blood into a laboratory in Israel. I asked one of the people I work with in antiquities, where is a good laboratory that does reliable work? And they said, such and such, such and such. I took it. I just said, please examine this blood and tell me what you can tell me about it. All right? They said, well, look, we're going to reconstitute it. We're going to put it in normal saline and keep it at body temperature for 72 hours with gentle swirling. All right? That's their business. That's great. I said, now I want to be there when you check it out. They said, fine. So I was back. They checked it out. I said, now, they said it's human blood. We can tell that. They did whatever tests they need to do. And then I said, take some of the white blood cells and put them in a growth medium and keep them at body temperature for 48 hours. And they said, well, that'll do no good because it's dead blood. I said, would you please do that for me? And they said, okay, we'll do it. So anyway, I said, I want to be there when you take it out and examine it. So I was back there. They took it out, examined it under a microscope, and the one technician called the other one over there, and then they called the boss over there, and they were talking Hebrew a mile a minute there for a little bit, and they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, 22 autosomes from your mother, 22 autosomes from your father. You get an X from your mother, you may get an X or a Y from your father, all right? This blood had 23 chromosomes from the mother's side, one Y chromosome only. You see, a child could not have developed if they hadn't had the autosomes from the mother. So all of his physical characteristics were determined by his mother's side of the family, her autosomes. His maleness was determined by this one Y that came from a source, not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah. And I assure you, those men's lives have changed.
Jesus' blood flowed out of his side, a crimson current, onto the rocks below, and onto the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, ratifying the Old Covenant and the New Covenant.